Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this ICT Parents webinar, the second in our webinar series that we are running. And this evening, our focus is on the nursery and how we use Showbie in the nursery. And so thank you to everyone who's joining us live. And if you're watching this later on demand, welcome also. I hope you find this evening really engaging and informative, and it's all part of what we're trying to do, just to make sure that we're being very open with our communication and helping parents to access the fabulous information that we're trying to share with them. I'm pleased tonight to be joined by Mrs. Kirsteen Laston, Acting Head of the Nursery. Good evening, Kirsteen. How are you?
Good evening. Very well. Thank you, Martin. Yeah.
Fantastic. Nice to see you, and thank you for joining us. Tonight is very much about trying to provide information to parents about how we use Showbie in the nursery. It's something that's relatively new. We introduced it last year. So really just trying to make sure that we've shared as much information as we can, and that access to information is as easy and useful as it possibly can be. Okay.
And can I just introduce you then, Martin, as leader of digital learning here at Edinburgh Academy Junior School. I have to say that Martin is hugely helpful to me and has taught me a lot in a short space of time about lots of different technological sides of things in nursery. And I'm going to hand over to Martin to speak a little bit more about how Showbie is used across the junior school.
Fantastic. So absolutely. I mean, for anyone who I haven't had the pleasure of meeting already, because I'm aware lots of families who are joining this webinar are perhaps relatively new to the school, perhaps haven't got children further up the years. My name is Martin Willis, and I am a primary school teacher. I was a class teacher here for 14 years, and I'm now the leader of digital learning across both the primary school and the secondary school. So it's all part of that kind of strategic vision and planning for how technology enhances everything that we do as a school. So I'm really keen to get involved in what's happening in the nursery and really excited about the conversation we're going to have tonight. So to get us started, I think the most important place to start is just to talk about what is Showbie. So Showbie is a platform that we use from primary 3 up until primary 6, and we've used it now for 6 or 7 years. And originally it started off as a platform where teachers could share digital content with students, and the students could complete tasks and complete work and send that back to the teacher, and their teacher was able to provide fantastic digital feedback, which could be text or audio recordings or marking up documents that the children have created. And during lockdown, that was an absolute saving grace for us, because actually it meant that our pupils were getting really powerful and effective and timely feedback on their work. And that encouraged us to think about how we could be using this in the nursery. And we'd started to use it a little bit, but this year we're really seeing the benefits of using Showbie in the nursery in a completely different way from how we use it in the primary school. So in the nursery, Showbie is used to record all of our observations and all of our comments on the learning that is taking place for our youngest children in the nursery. And those feedback tools allow our early years practitioners to provide really powerful, meaningful feedback. But the important element of that is that it's as quick and easy as it possibly can be. Because what we don't want Showbie to do, or any platform to do, is to take away from the quality time that our staff are spending actually engaging and interacting with children. Because I think that's where we feel things are most important, Kirsteen, correct?
Absolutely.
Yep. So what I'm going to do tonight is I'm actually going to jump into Showbie, and what I'm looking at here is the desktop version of Showbie. So it looks slightly different to how it will do for most of you, because I'm aware that most of our parents will access Showbie through a mobile device, probably a mobile phone. So Showbie is available as an app that can be downloaded from the Apple iTunes Store, or it is now available for Android as well, or it can be accessed at showbie.com. And when you first access Showbie, you need to create a parent's account, which is very simple to do, completely free. You can attach it to any email address, and then your early years practitioners will be able to share with you, and you have already received this code by email, but they can share with you pupil codes. And that is how you get access to your pupil content, your children's content rather, within Showbie. So you can see here that I'm in a test parents account, and I've set it up so I've got 2 children. So that's important to note, is the fact that even though I'm only logged into the app once, I can view all of my children that are using Showbie. And this pupil here is in a primary class, and it's a primary 4 class, and there's nothing in there, but it's just for demonstration purposes. But up here, I've got one of my nursery children. And when I go in there, into this class, you can see how that is set out. So I've got folders for all the curriculum areas. And Kirsteen will go into how that's organised and how that's used a little bit more in detail. But the important thing to note is the difference here between the Students tab and the Groups tab. So when you're in the Students menu, you can view all of your children, and you can see and have access to their observations and their feedback that they've received from staff. When you go to Groups, you get access to what we are currently calling homeroom groups. And the reason they're called homeroom groups at the moment is just to help with the transition from our old system, which was called Homeroom. We used to have this app, which was called Homeroom, and parents used that to access, it was almost a bit like Instagram, really. It was kind of a safe and secure version of Instagram. And I'm sure most of you are very familiar with this already from this year. But basically, this is where you can get a quick insight into what's been happening today or this week in each nursery room. So if you haven't got access to this groups feature already, you should have received an email with a code for each of the nursery rooms that you've got children in. And you simply click on that plus button and enter that code. If you need to get that code again, any of the staff in the nursery are able to help you with that. Or if you email the parents' ICT email address, which I'll share with you again later on in this session, we can give you that information also. But it just gives you a really nice overview of what's been happening in the nursery. A little tip that I'm going to give you straight away, and this is helpful within both groups and the classes, are these little 3 dots that appear at the top here. I would be sure to tap on that and make sure you've got show large previews turned on. If you don't have that turned on, it looks quite different. That's the view you get. It's not quite as pleasing. It's not as easy to see what's happening in the nursery group. So if you just tap and make sure your large previews are switched on, they will stay on, and it makes it a little bit more like that kind of Instagram feed that lots of us are familiar with. And the newest posts, of course, always appear at the top. So that is the difference between groups and the Students tab. Okay. If you don't have access to anything to do with Showbie, so if you need help creating your parents' account, if you need help linking your account to your pupils, to your children, I should say, or if you need access to any of the groups, let us know. We can easily help you with that. Again, if you've got that student code or that pupil code, and you're trying to add your children to your parents' account, it's a case of clicking on the plus button and adding your student code, which you will have been provided. Okay. Kirsteen, I don't know if this is a good time for us to kind of move on to talking about how this actually looks in a day-to-day scenario in the nursery.
Yeah, absolutely. I could also say, Mr. Willis, the lights are dim.
I was going to mention that. This is a good time for me to mention that Mrs. Laston's actually in one of our primary 6 classrooms at the moment, which are fabulous classrooms and fabulous eco-aware spaces. And sure, the downside of it when you've not got any children moving about is that the lights switch off every kind of 10 minutes if you don't move. So we do appreciate, Mrs. Laston, if you do plunge into darkness, you may need to wave your arms around for a moment to come back into the light. Another point to kind of apologise on is I wasn't aware that I was recording this in a room next door to a Suzuki violin concert, which is happening next door. So if you can hear any kind of music in the background, that's fine. But Kirsteen, I'm going to let you take over and talk a little bit about how should we use Showbie, and I'll kind of demonstrate on the screen what you're talking about.
Brilliant. Thank you, Martin. It's probably quite important at this point to say that Showbie has been quite life-changing in nursery for our EYPs, our early years practitioners, and for the communication and the relationship that we have with parents. When I think back to what we had before we had Showbie, it would be the PLPs, the personal learning plans, and you would have books that were made almost like scrapbooks, and early years practitioners would spend time writing in these books, sticking pictures in these books, paintings, all sorts of things, and that was very time consuming. And as Martin has said there, we want our early years practitioners to be making the best use of their time. And we believe that is spending time with your children and enhancing their learning. So we've gone from having physical books to now having an online platform where we have a digital footprint of your child's learning journey. And of course, in the nursery, that's where the learning journey begins. Over the last, I think it's 3 years now, Martin, that we've had Showbie. It's been wonderful to see how it's evolved, and we've been honing it and fine-tuning it to fit to our nursery, I suppose. And just even in this past year, I'll show in more detail how we've organised the folders so that things are clearer, hopefully for parents, so that when you're looking in at some of your children's observations, you know which outcomes and things they're looking at. Okay. The benefits of Showbie are that it gives parents an instant access to what their children have been doing. So you'll be able to see observations now that Showbie is open. We opened that just after October half term, and it will remain open all year. So you will see when observations are being added to your child's portfolio. The other side of it, as Martin has explained, is the Showbie groups. And that is hugely popular and very successful. And parents, I know, really, really enjoy looking at that and seeing what their children have been doing during the day, and are able to then to chat to their children about these things. So if we look at actual Showbie and how it looks on screen. Now, Mr. Willis, I can't see the screen again. Oh, there you are.
A little button on the side of my mouse which closes my window. So for about 10 seconds there, Mrs. Laston, you were on your own.
That was.
You really were. So I'm just going to come back in here.
Okay.
Let me just jump back in. There we go. I'm back. Okay.
Great.
Apologies.
So you can access your child's portfolio. Now at the top where it says portfolio and they're starred, those are all the observations and photographs that your child has, okay? But if you go into the assignments, or is it classes, Mr. Willis? I can't remember. Yeah, go into, yes, here. We've arranged all the folders, okay, so that all the curricular areas are labeled. So you've got literacy, numeracy, health and wellbeing, and within those folders, we have the curriculum for excellence outcomes, okay? And these are what you will have observations regarding. And I've tried to sort of simplify these for both the EYPs and for parents looking at them, so that when they go into numeracy, for example, you can see what have we been doing on, let's see, pattern. Can we go to pattern, Mr. Willis, and see if there's anything in there? Yes, here's an observation, okay? What we'd be looking for in an observation is what exactly has been happening, what's the child been participating in, what skill is being used, and how we would like to develop that and in our next steps. So as you can see in this observation, that I have said within a small group, whilst using Smartboard, Louisa was able to successfully recognise a 2-colour, 2-shaped pattern and continued it with ease. So it tells me what she was doing, okay? When I asked her more about the shape, she could tell me a little bit more. And then I've put, to further extend Louisa at the end, we shall try making and continuing more complex patterns using more than 2 colours and shapes. So the observation in a nutshell tells you what your child has been doing, the activity, what skill was used, and the next steps that we envisage. Okay, so the purpose of observations is to inform our planning and to ensure that we are being responsive to each individual child's needs and where they're at. Okay, so it's very much a personal learning journey. Okay, some of the observations might be quite detailed like that, I've done another one in measurement and size, which is really detailed. And I was showing my colleague, and she said, yeah, but we don't always have time to do observations like that. And that's fine, because we sometimes just record things in Showbie showing that children are experiencing joy and having joy in their learning, and it might not say anything about skills being used or next steps, and that's fine. It might be something that EYPs just want to share with parents and think parents would like to see that, and we encourage that also. Let's see, so if we go back a step, so these are all our numeracy outcomes. We go back a step and say we went to expressive arts, for example. One in there, in art and design. Now, Mr. Willis, see the little red circle?
Yes.
That tells me that there's an observation in there at the moment. So if you see the red circle, I would click on that in art and design, and here we go. We've got Louisa painted a brilliant self-portrait in the arts and craft table. Okay, so it's telling me what she was doing, it's putting it into context. It's saying she looked closely at the mirror in front of her to guide her as she painted. She had a variety of coloured paints in front of her to choose from, and she was able to tell me her eye colour, hair colour, and lots more. Well done, Louise. And it's showing that she enjoyed the activity and it was very pleasing. There's not necessarily next steps in there, but it's something that records what the child has been learning, and it's sharing it with you, the parent. Okay. So if you have any issues accessing any of your observations, then please do just get in touch with us. All the observations that you see, am I right in thinking, Mr. Willis, that all the observations that are starred, parents are able to see?
Yes. Yeah. So because when parent access is open, parents have got access to all observations. But when they're starred, they go into this portfolio section here. So if parents are looking for a really easy way to find observations, rather than going through the curriculum areas and looking to see where there are new additions, they can just tap on the portfolio, and if an observation has been highlighted by a member of staff and starred, it will appear in that portfolio. So this may not necessarily show you every single observation, but it will show you the observations that are definitely complete and that have been starred by the early years practitioner, and it shows them in chronological order as well. Another feature I was just going to bring up on that is this little bell icon here, which appears for parents on every screen of Showbie. So you'll always see this bell, whether you're on a desktop or on a tablet or on a mobile phone, you always see this notification bell. And what that does is if you tap on it, it just shows you the most recent things that have happened in your Showbie account. So you can very quickly see that something has been added to the homeroom group, a little video there. Been granted access to a class I tried to join. So that's quite a good way of quickly seeing what's happened most recently in the whole of Showbie for you and your children. And then, of course, if I click on one of these items, it takes me directly to that update. So this is going to take me into my homeroom, and I can see here that this is the video that was discussed in that notification. Unfortunately, because it's a video, I don't get a little kind of preview of it. If I click on that, it then shows up as a video. And this is obviously showing us what the children have been doing in their French activities this week. So yeah, just again, just a little reminder to have that large preview button switched on. If I quickly jump into an assignment, sorry, not an assignment, a class, and we're in numeracy there, not numeracy. Where did we find some good observations, Mrs. Laston? Can you remind me?
I've got
Expressive arts.
Expressive arts, yeah.
Yep. There we go. Just having that large preview switched on there as well, so we get those previews. Something we haven't discussed, Mrs. Laston, that might be worth looking at is this tracking document here as well.
Yes, I was going to come to that. Perfect. Yes. So if you open the tracking document at the bottom, this is the tracking document that we have used over the past few years, and it really tracks the 4 different areas: the communication, thinking skills, relationships, and motor skills of children. And right at the centre will be your child's name with their date of birth. And the green centre right around the name is for our youngest children. So these are the areas that we would expect children to develop first. Okay, and as you're going further out the circle, children are reaching these developmental milestones as they get older. So with this tracking, this will go all the way through nursery with your child. And essentially our EYPs, when they see, it's quite small, but I'm going to look at some of them. If they can say for sure, right, your child is able to match objects by colour, shape and size, and they definitely can do that, then there will be an observation in Showbie evidencing that, okay? But they put that little green dot there, and we date that for November 2020, okay? And you can see the dots, the blue dots, and then the pink dots. As the child is getting older, they're going further out the circle, okay? So these are a really useful tool for a quick glance to look at, perhaps, do we need to work on maybe the communication side of things? Are we looking more at the fine motor skills? So as a practitioner looking at that, and as a teacher looking at that, you can see there are maybe some gaps in those areas. These are what we call developmental milestones, and they are sort of generalized for different ages of children. So this has been for a child that's been in our nurseries for maybe a couple of years. So it will go with the child through their learning journey through nursery. Is there anything else on that, Mr. Willis, I should say?
I don't think so. I think that covers it. I mean, it's maybe just worth mentioning that, yes, this document sits in Showbie, but you do have the option to download that file. So if you wanted to save your own copy of that document for reporting purposes, that is possible, as it is with any observation, visual observation in Showbie. So if I was looking at that expressive arts observation again, that's a really nice photograph there that I might want to take a copy of. So you've got that download button on my desktop, but it's available on the app version as well, just to have that as a memento of that moment of development.
And am I right in thinking, would you be able to, if there was a lovely photograph, say, for example, I'm thinking of our nativity, I would imagine there'd be photographs and observations about the nativity. Could you then print that off as a parent?
We could. We do kind of have some kind of common sense pleas around that kind of thing. Obviously, if there are photographs of other children, just being a bit sensitive and consider how you're using that information. If you are pulling off photographs from Showbie, which include other children, not posting that to social media, for example. It's a kind of personal record of what's happening in our nursery, as it would be with anything that we share and create as a school. So yeah, within reason, that is absolutely possible. So that's us really, isn't it, in terms of how Showbie is used? And
yeah,
Sorry, on you go.
I was just going to mention that some parents have said about, our EYPs, because they really love Showbie and they're very dedicated to their job, you might find that they're posting at sort of 8 o'clock in the evening. And some parents have actually come in and said, gosh, you were working late, Mrs. Morrow. And we saw that you posted at 8 o'clock last night. And that's because they were receiving notifications.
Yes.
Is there some way we can manage that?
Definitely. And for many parents to join and watch this webinar, I imagine this might be the most critical piece of information that some of them are looking for, because I'm aware that as a parent or even as a member of staff using Showbie, the notifications can become quite overwhelming. And I want to spend some time now just resharing the information about how to limit and reduce the volume of notifications you get, because you don't want to be getting them at all hours of the evening or during the working day. We're putting things in throughout the day. So if I just jump back into my demonstration account here, you can see that on the top right hand corner here, I've got my kind of account menu. Now, if you're on the app version of Showbie, it's on the left hand side rather than the right, but that's the only difference. And I tap on my account menu, and you can see here I've got this option here for notification preferences. And when I go into my notification preferences, it splits into 3 sections. I'm just going to see if I can make this a little bit bigger for you and focus in on what we're actually looking at the moment. There we go, that's better. So there we go. Just increase that slightly. There we go. So I can control my push notifications for portfolio, assignments, and groups. And you want to manage all 3 of these, would be my advice. So if we go through it first, portfolio. Do I want to be alerted when an item is added to my child's portfolio? So those are those observations where the star has been highlighted by a member of staff. I've got 2 options here. You can see that as standard, they're both turned on. One reflects email notifications, another one reflects those pop-up notifications on my device. So if I were you, I'd be switching them both off. If you're really keen to be up to date with every observation as it comes in, maybe you pop on the notifications. It depends on how you use your device and how your day is managed. But for me personally, I don't want an email going into my inbox, which I'm never going to look again, just telling me that there's been a new update there. So if anything, I'd imagine parents are going to use those notification pop-ups. But there's nothing to say you can't just switch off both of them. Assignments. So this in nursery will have less impact than it would do for a child further up the school, to be honest with you. Because in nursery, we're not sending the children tasks and giving them, expecting them to send us work back in the same way we obviously would be further up the school. So I would be tempted to turn all of these off to start with. But then perhaps if a teacher adds an item, so that would be an observation, I might decide I want to turn that on. A teacher shares something with the whole class, probably not going to be particularly pertinent to my own child, so I would possibly leave those off. Your child is not going to be adding any items to Showbie because they can't. So you choose what you want here. I would imagine that's probably the only one you might want to keep on there. Okay. And then finally, we've got groups, which is that kind of class Instagram account. And this is where people, I think, in nursery are going to be getting the most notifications, because in nursery, we use groups a lot to kind of give that daily update. So if it was me, and again, it's personal choice, I'd be switching off the emails. And video chat, we don't use anymore. That was a kind of test product that we looked at, and it was quite useful in upper primary during lockdown. We used it to engage with classes during lockdown. So I'd be switching that off. Someone else's file is annotated. Nope, don't want to know about that. File is annotated. So that would maybe be my child's tracking sheet. Maybe something's being added to that. I might keep that on. A comment or a file, that would be observation. So I might choose to keep that on. My request to join a group is approved. We have set this so that you shouldn't need approval to join a group, but I'm aware that some parents have found that they have been asked for approval, so we've been kind of keeping an eye and making sure that that approval has been granted. So you might want to keep that on just for the start of a new year to make sure that you have got into the groups that you have tried to get into. But that will dramatically reduce the notifications that you get sent through to your device. Which possibly takes us quite nicely on to kind of questions, things that you want to ask us about. I've already got a couple of questions that have come in by email. If you are watching this live, please feel free to use the chat feature within YouTube to send us any questions you might have. Or if you want to email the questions, the address is coming along the bottom of the screen there. Feel free to email them to that email address, parents.ict@edinburghacademy.org.uk. And that is the email address that we would encourage you to use if you're having any issues with any aspect of Showbie, because we can then get that support to you and help you with any access issues or technical problems you're having there. I'm just looking at my emails here and having a look at a couple of the emails that are coming through. One of the questions is asking, what happens at the end of the year? So we've got access to all of these resources throughout the school year. What happens when our child goes into a preschool year or into primary one? Are you happy for me to take that one, Kirsteen, or do you want to? Yeah.
Yes.
So, so at the end of this nursery year, your child, if they are continuing in nursery, will obviously continue to use Showbie after the summer. And I'm just going to show you what that would look like. So if I go into my child's account, you can see here classes. They've currently got one class, which is this year's nursery class. When they come back after the summer, 2 classes would appear there. So I would get last year's records. So I still have access to that. I don't lose access to that at the end of the year, but my new class would appear here as well, the new academic year. So that's quite nice. You can look back and see what's happened before. If they're moving into primary 1 or onto another school, your child will not use Showbie in the same way in primary 1. So you will not receive a new class appearing here for primary 1. We don't use Showbie for reporting observations. We use the formal reporting structure that we use in primary school. So you will still have access to your parents' account because you will still want to use Showbie for groups, because your primary 1 class will have a group here, and the class teacher in primary 1 will, as we do in nursery, send little updates of special things that have been happening that day or that week. It's not used to the same extent as it is in nursery, but they are active, so it's worth keeping a look at that. So you will continue to use your same parents' account, and you will continue to be linked to your child. So you don't need to reconnect with your children every academic year. Your child will then go through primary 1 and primary 2, not receiving observations or content through Showbie, just using those groups. And then when they go into primary 3, they get their iPad that they use in their classroom, and they get access to their Showbie account. So you've already got access to kind of the parent link to that account. But once they start using their primary 3 iPad, they then start to work with Showbie as well. So you will be able to see the work that the teacher is doing with the children in Showbie, all the fantastic digital content that they're creating and sending back to their teacher, and all of that feedback as well, that really rich feedback that they receive through Showbie. What I would say is, and we're still in nursery, so we're not thinking too much about this yet, but don't ever expect Showbie to be a finished document that we close the book on and it's done. It's very much a working document. You will occasionally see things in there that are not completely finished and complete, because a child's learning journey is never finished and complete and tidy. It's always developing and progressing. And actually, as a class teacher, when we get into primary, a lot of my most valuable feedback is face-to-face. And I'm actually talking to the children. I don't want the majority of their feedback or the most important feedback coming digitally to them. It's all about that relationship within the classroom. So it's lovely to have access to these things. And in nursery especially, I know it's particularly important, especially at the moment where things are still a little bit different and we don't have the access to the rooms that we'd all love to have. But there is so much more going on than just what you see in Showbie, is what I'm trying to say. I think that's really important to stress.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've touched on the fact that normally we would have parents coming into nursery, they would be able to see in their children's rooms, and we're so aware that parents haven't been able to do that this year. So, which is why Showbie homeroom groups is so invaluable, because parents have said to us they feel like they can be little flies on the wall and actually see what their children are doing, particularly when there's videos put up and things like that. But I like the fact, Martin, that you also said, in nursery, our prime communication is when we're talking with parents at drop off and pick up, and we have those snippets of information, and we have those that dialogue, and that is, we would always prefer face-to-face communication. But Showbie has facilitated. I'm just going to have to move.
Well, those lights go off again. We're losing you. There we go.
Showbie has meant that we have a digital footprint, if I can call it that, of a child's learning journey, and it's just one part of the jigsaw of their whole learning journey. But it's a lovely thing to actually have, and as you were saying, you could print off photographs if you particularly want to, but it will always be there. And I like the fact that, particularly if children are starting in Willow, their learning journey on Showbie continues all the way through to their preschool year. So it's quite a unique platform, and I think something that we're sort of honing and tailoring to suit our nursery, and it's exciting.
Very much so, very much so. I've only got one more question that's come up, which is how do we get Showbie? So I might just revisit that one slightly if we've got time. I'm just going to share my screen again. And here you can see what Showbie looks like. Now, this is the desktop version of Showbie. So just going to www.showbie.com in any internet browser or mobile device. But as I said, there is also a Showbie app that you can download. So if you just search for Showbie spelt as it is there, we'll get this free app. And when you first enter it, you're faced with this screen here, and you want to go to the sign up for free button. It's the exact same on the app and the desktop version. Make sure, and this is really important, that you sign up as a parent and not a student or a teacher. Even if you are a parent who is also a teacher, please make sure you sign up as a parent. Otherwise, you won't have the access that we need you to have. And my recommendation would be to use this sign up with email option. You can also sign up if you've got a pre-existing Google account or Microsoft account, and it just kind of reduces those email, places you're sharing details with. But sign up with email, pop your names in, an email and a password of your choosing, and then it will take you to a screen where you're asked to add a pupil code. And that is the pupil code that we have emailed you. So you should have received an email quite a few weeks ago now, which was tailored to your child and gave you that 5-digit code. If for any reason you have lost that or you didn't receive that email, have a chat with your child's EYP. They can get that code from their Showbie account, or as I've said before, just ping an email to that Parents ICT help desk, and we will get that information to you, and then you'll be able to link up with your child and get access to everything they need. And things keep on popping into my mind, but it's worth noting that you will only ever have access to the information that is pertinent to your child. So in terms of security, obviously as a teacher, I can see all of the children in my class, but as a parent, you only get access to the information that's relevant to your child. Okay. Just another note on that email address that's popping along the bottom there. If you have any concerns or any issues or any problems with anything tech related, be that school website or calendar dates or Firefly or Showbie, that's the best place to get support with that. We've got a team across both sites who receive those emails, and then that can be sent and allocated to the best person to help you, and we can follow you through that to make sure that you get the help you need. But really, that's Showbie in a nutshell. I mean, we've spoken for well over half an hour, and Showbie is one of these things, Kirsteen, that if people ask me to talk about it, I could honestly talk about Showbie all night. I absolutely love it, and I'm really excited about how we're using it in the nursery. And I know that Showbie are actually really excited about how we're using their platform in the nursery, because we are using it in quite a unique way. And we looked at other options, we looked at other platforms, and we felt that actually Showbie was the best one for us, because it meant, we don't want to keep on adding new platforms and asking parents to use multiple platforms for school. But also, we felt it was the easiest one for our staff in terms of getting good quality content in there quickly and easily, so they've got time to actually engage with children and do a jigsaw and play outside, rather than having to be at a computer filling in lengthy forms to get that information out to parents.
Absolutely, yeah.
Really important. So I'm going to call it a day there, I think. And thank you to those who have joined us live or are following up with this later in the day. If you do have any further questions, please feel free to drop us an email at the email address mentioned before. And keep an eye out for emails that I'll be sending about upcoming webinars. We're trying to do one of these kind of every month on various topics. And as we move into January and the new year, we're looking at kind of internet safety as a real focus, which, even though our youngest learners are still at nursery, is something we need to start thinking about and perhaps educating ourselves about a little bit more. So that will be something that we're focusing on in the coming months. Okay. So, Kirsteen, I'm going to thank you for your time, and I'm going to thank
as always, whenever I have a conversation with you, Martin, I always learn something new. So thank you so much for inviting me. This is the first webinar I've ever done, and I feel as if like I'm on television or something. But thank you very much for all your help and for all the valuable information you shared.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Okay.